everyone, this is Karaleise. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Please check out my other videos. This is a place where you learn about business analysis, you learn about software tools for business analysts, even for product owners, product managers, project managers can also find value here as well. If you are a new graduate looking to start in the field, this is a perfect place for you. I actually do have a consultation that you can find on my website, karaleise.com, where if you need personalized, specialized help, if you need me to look at your particular situation and craft for you a strategy for you to get into this career, then you should definitely go check out my website, karaleise.com, and look at my consultations. You can also look at other consultations from documentation to interview prep. Maybe you have an interview coming up and you need some help. You can definitely check that out as well. And also go to Amazon and check out my new book called The Business Analyst Job Market Report. That's going to be a book that tells you everything that employers are looking for so that when you're entering the job market, you can be prepped. You can know what to expect, how much salary you should be paid, what are the skills that they want, what certifications are they asking for, what are the things that employers find valuable in a business analyst. So you can go check out that report. It's available on Amazon. You can have it in print or you can have it in Kindle. And last but not least, please check out my podcast, right? So it's great that you're watching the video, but maybe you just want to be multitasking and you want to be able to listen to me as well. Check out my podcast. It's called Real World Business Analysis with Karaleise, and you can get it on Spotify, on Apple, on Google, wherever you get your podcast. You can go there and check out my podcast as well. So, without further ado, let's start in the topic of today, which is workflow statuses in Jira. So I have my Jira up right here, and if you have admin rights, you can go to your project settings and you could go to workflows. And literally what the workflows are is just how do you move the user stories between different statuses? Like how do you easily show what status a story is in? And so I'm just going to walk you through my flow, how I have my Jira set up for statuses. So this is not a good example because this is showing just this. Well, actually, I could start here. So basically, when you install Jira, it comes with these three basic statuses, which is to do, in progress, and done. You can literally move them around like that. You can edit a status. You can add a new line from here to here to say this is a transition. I'm not going to go into all of that, but you basically can go in and create transitions to say you can move from this status to this status and then to that status. So you can map out what statuses can lead to which other statuses, and you can determine if a status is in progress or a done status or a to-do status. Now, I'm going to have another video where I talk about how to create the statuses. This video is intended to just talk about the flow, an example of how I am doing my flows. So let me go to my project settings and let's go to, okay, so let me go into project settings. Let's go into workflows. And I'm going to share with you my my dev workflow. Let's do this one. Okay. All right. So this is my dev workflow. Not to say that this is the end all be all and that this is the only better way to do it. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just giving you an example of what I'm working with, and you can tweak it for yourself and create your own for yourself. So feel free to check out my other video on how to create this, but this video is going to be, how to work with it. What does it mean? What flows should you have, and how does that work? Okay. So I've started off by, we have a to-do flow, and I'm going to show transitions here just so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So I start off with to-do, right? And from to-do, you can move to putting something on hold. So maybe you have to do just like an open status. Some companies like to just start call it open, and to do meaning that you've done some work on the open to make it ready to be done, right? So you could do it that way too. But I have right here to do. So from to do, you could have a waiting list that comes to do, which I'll explain what that is in a minute. So I'm going to talk about where it leads to before I show you what's coming towards it, right? So I'm going to only show you the arrows going away from it to show you the ID flow. So when you first create a user story, it's going to be in to-do status. That's our default. And then the next thing that happens is that it goes into a AC ready to review status. Now you can call these statuses whatever you like. The only important thing is you can choose what category of a status it is. So for example, if I change this to in progress status and I were to save that, then it changes to blue. That's what Jira recognizes to be in progress, right? But right now I want it to be a to-do status. And it just means that these are statuses that you're about to start working in, right? In progress statuses are different statuses that you're working in already, and done statuses are like final state status, like released or done or stuff like that. In progress could be like you'll see over here, on hold, ready, deployed, etc. Okay, so Jira denotes them with a blue color, and done statuses are with a green color, and to do is in a gray color. AC ready to review. What this means is the acceptance criteria is ready to be reviewed. This is the term I'm using. Some people call it work in progress by BA or any number of names. All it is, it's a status to represent the fact that it's not just open, like it's not just newly created, that somebody is working on it, but it's a business analyst working on it, or somebody's refining that acceptance criteria. We're in the process of talking to a product team. We're in the process of, working with UX designers or talking to clients or whatever. We're in that process, refining what the acceptance criteria should say. So it means that it's not ready. It's not in the definition of ready. So you shouldn't be picking stories in a review status for your sprint, right? Because you're still working on it. Now, once you finish working on it and you've reviewed it, you've confirmed everything in there, it's good, then you can set it to approve to develop, which is a term that we're using. It could be just approved. It could be, some people even use this to be the to-do status, and this is a open, right? So it doesn't matter. But the point is that there is a status that represents, okay, this story has been refined. We have verified everything in the acceptance criteria. We've written it properly and clearly, and we're now confident and ready for developers to start looking at it, to add it to a sprint, for it to be a part of a sprint grooming, etc., etc. So once you've gone from your approved to develop, then the developers pick it up. Let's say it's in a sprint and they start working on it. Now it goes into in progress, right? So when they're working in progress, they're building, they're writing the code. Number of things can happen. One, it could be that there is some kind of block and it needs some more information, and so you put it on hold, right? So any status can go to on hold. That's why you have all here. So all statuses can transition to on hold. And you can go from on hold back to in progress. So it could be that you're on hold here for whatever reason. You got that clarification. You can switch it back to in progress and keep working on it. Or it could be that, you were working on it and somehow we pulled it out of the sprint completely, and now it just goes back into a to-do status. Maybe the acceptance criteria that we thought was refined, the project scope changed, and now they don't want to do that anymore, and now all those details are no longer relevant or whatever. So it has to go back in a to-do status so that the business analyst can go back and review it and do all this reviewing again and get it back to approved to develop stage. So that could happen as well. Now, all statuses can go to approved AC ready to review as well, right? So there's a lot of back and forth here, but this is the workflow that a lot of people have found to work. I mean, it's just the way it is. So once you're in progress, now let's say you didn't have any of those anomalies happen, then the next stage you'd move to is QA, deployed to QA. Well, some developers, and this is a part I'm not pretending to know, there is this PR ready status, which could be that they push the code to some environment and they're doing code review. I don't really know what PR ready fully means because I'm not in the dev side, but there is a status that they have to either code review or do something, from a purely technical perspective. That's what PR ready means here. Once they've approved the code, they review the code, whatever, make sure it's not buggy and it's not going to break anything else. Then they push it to a QA environment typically. So within the QA environment, now you move the ticket from PR ready to ready, deploy to QA or ready to QA or whatever. And so it means that this is in the environment now that we can start testing it. Once it's in that environment, QA technicians and engineers can pick it up. I'm going to turn off the label so that we don't, it kind of crosses over, and I don't want to change how this is laid out. By the way, getting the layout, the format to look even readable can be a challenge, right? Moving all of these so that the arrows can show. Oh my goodness, it's not always easy. So I'm not even going to touch this. So this is my test environment, by the way. This is an environment I use for my case studies when I'm working with my clients, and we're doing mentorship sessions and we're doing practice sessions. This is the environment I have them working in. But it's very similar to what happens in the real world, right? So once you've deployed to QA, right, it's QA ready. It means that the QA engineer, the quality assurance engineer, can now start looking at that story and start working on it, right? And so they work on it, they're testing it, they do this, all the different types of testing that they do. And then once they start testing, they put it in testing so that anybody who looks at the story can see that it's in testing, right? So you don't make changes because somebody's testing it. Normally, if you have like dispersed teams in different countries, this is very helpful for you to know where they are with what and what's still left to be done. Now, when they do their testing, they can either reject it or they can approve it. It could be that they found some bug and it really doesn't match the acceptance criteria and there's a bunch of stuff. So then they could go to QA rejected, or they could say QA approved and it's done. Now, there is some challenges here where you could test something and you find a bug and the bug is not fixable within the sprint. So you don't want to keep stories in, let's say, QA rejected because you have a bug open for it. And so the bug wouldn't get fixed until the next sprint. So now you keep the story all the way open. Now there are different ways to handle that. You could either move the story out into a different sprint and just handle it there when you fix that bug. Or you could find another way to handle it. Maybe that acceptance criteria, move it out and make another story for that so the rest of the story can be closed. There's a number of ways that you can handle that so you don't end up having stories open or pulling forward too many big stories into other sprints. It's a challenge to manage, but this is just one of the things that you have to use your analytical skills, right? And your Scrum Master skills. And typically, if you have a Scrum Master, this is not something that the business analyst has to worry about. But there are times when we're playing dual roles, right? When we are the product owners, we are the Scrum Masters, we are the business analysts. So it depends on your environment and where your focus area ends and where somebody else's begins. So typically this could be handled by a Scrum Master, it could be handled by a product owner. So it doesn't really have to be you, but sometimes it is, right? And then if the testing was successful, it goes to QA approved and it goes to done. No, it doesn't have to be a QA approved. It could just go from testing to done. But it depends on some environments. Like if you have a lot of different steps in the process in the QA, and maybe there is a different team. Maybe you want to make sure that it doesn't go to done until somebody else, like the business analyst, reviews the final thing. Maybe there's a step in between in the process to make sure that, okay, the QA reviewed it, but when the business analyst or the person who wrote the acceptance criteria looks at it, they want to make sure it also is done. Maybe the done only happens after demo. I don't know. So that's why sometimes we have this QA approved step. Some people don't have that. It just goes testing, either rejected or it's done, So there you have it. That is my workflow example in Jira. So there is a waiting list step that I forgot to explain, and I did say I was going to come back to it. So the waiting list is basically saying that maybe you wrote a story for this. Maybe this was something that you had like some user stories or some features scoped out for, and then priorities change and product says, hey, we're just going to have to take that out completely for this release and we'll come back to it next release. But you don't want to delete the stories because you don't want to lose that data. So you just put it under waiting list because it's not really to do, it's not really open. It already has its acceptance criteria. Everything's written up for it, but it's just not something that you're going to be picking right now to go into a sprint anytime soon. So you put it into waiting list and it just stays there until you're ready to start going again. Now it could go from waiting list to in progress, but because we already have this flow, we just go waiting list and then you start over to do, acceptance criteria, ready to review, etc., etc. Okay. Hey guys, are you liking the video so far? I believe we are one of the best channels on YouTube for business analysis. So if you could help us out by clicking like, clicking subscribe, clicking on the bell, and also leave a comment below. Let me know if your company is using any other statuses in your workflow, or if you have any questions at all about this video. Leave a comment below. I want to hear what you guys think, okay? Thank you. Like, subscribe, and share, guys. Let other people know that this content exists, right? Share it with your friends, share it with your coworkers, and let's spread the word. Thank you. So that's what the flow looks like. Let me jump real quick to what it would look like in the actual Jira. Let's say I'm in this user story and I go here. Now I can see what my transitions are based on what that workflow that I had. So I can transition all statuses to ready to review. So now this would mean that I am in ready to review. And when I go to my backlog, I'll see that the ready to review is showing there. Or I could say, okay, I've already reviewed it. Now let's move it to approve to develop. That way it can be picked up to go into the sprint. When the developers start working on that, I can go in progress. But as you notice, I could go back to ready to review, or I could go to waiting list because waiting list can have any transition, any story transition to it. But let's say the developers start working, they put it in progress. So I can see whenever I come in, I can see that this story is in progress. When they have an issue, maybe they put it on hold like that. But if I'm on hold, I can go back to in progress like I showed you guys. And then once I've finished it, then I could go to PR ready, and that means that we're doing our code reviews and peer reviews, etc. Once that's done, we can deploy it. So now the QA engineer can see that, okay, this story is ready to be ready to be tested because it's already in QA. So we put it under QA ready. The deploy to QA just means that they have sent it to that environment. It should follow that after that it's ready for QA, but there's a second step for that as well. You may or may not need to have that, but we'll see. Once they start testing, then the QA person comes in and says, okay, I'm testing this ticket right now. So that means nobody should edit it because I'm in the middle of testing it. Once they're done, they can say either it's rejected or it's approved. Now, if I go to rejected first, then that means that the developers need to pay attention to this because there's something in here that didn't meet their criteria, or they would go and say, so once it's rejected, it has to be, either go back to in progress where they go fix the code, or maybe there was something that was fixed. So you just go to QA ready, and then you can go back to testing, and then you can go to QA approved. Now, in my example, I have the word verified here, which is something that the QA person would put to say, oh, we have checked this acceptance criteria. It matches out. It's verified. Okay, and so on and so forth. So, and I think they spelled it wrong here. Verified. I have a very sharp eye, right? So I gotta fix everything. So yeah, so that's how we do it. So that when I look at the acceptance criteria, I can see that they checked every single acceptance criteria. And that's why it is QA approved, right? Because I'm very meticulous. It comes right down to the bone. I'm looking at everything. Right? So that's how it looks when you're working with it from this perspective. So here's what the workflow statuses in Jira look like from the backlog views. As you can see, for example, I am displaying the status below these these user stories. So in this case, this one is in progress. This one is approved to develop. This one is in AC ready to review. And so are these three. This is in to-do status. This is waiting list. Now, typically, you don't really want to have too much things in your waiting list because you shouldn't be creating a bunch of user stories that are not going to be developed anytime soon. But this is the case where you created it thinking you were going to develop it, and then something happened and you had to push, deprioritize it. So that's where that's there. So you really shouldn't have too much things in waiting list. But the idea here, though, is that when you're ready to pull into your sprint, you're going to pull, for example, approve to develop this one, but you wouldn't pull these three because you can see that the business analyst or the product owner is still working on refining that acceptance criteria. And then this one, you can see nobody started working on it yet. Like it says to do, meaning that neither the business analyst has looked at it. So it's nowhere near ready, right? So this would be the only one in approve in definition of ready state for you to pull, and so on and so forth. So that's how having the statuses will help you to see things quickly and to make decisions quickly and to just know where you are when you're managing a really large backlog with lots of backlog items. You really want to be able to quickly know what's where. And typically the things that are already flow to the top, you move them up so that they're ready to go, and the things you're working on is to the middle, to the bottom. So that's how we do it, okay? So workflow statuses in Jira. Here is my example. I gave you a great example of what I'm doing. Let's go back to the project settings for this. Let's go back to project settings. You need to be an admin in order for you to be able to see this. So if you go back to your project settings, you go to workflows. That is where you can see your workflow statuses in Jira. So I've called mine dev workflow. You click on edit, and that's what you see here, workflow status. Now, one more thing I want to caution you about. Jira can act very weird when you start making changes to an existing workflow in an existing project. So I highly advise you to be very careful when you make changes here, because existing tickets, you might see that your backlog looks empty or your sprint board is like all screwed up. It's because you have to go back and add those statuses to those things, right? So it's not something you should be playing around with too often, but definitely if you're starting a whole new project, you'd want to make sure that you have the right statuses set up. All right. So if this video on workflow statuses in Jira was helpful to you, please like and subscribe. Also leave a comment. Let me know if there's any status that you're using in your organization that I don't have here, or if you have any questions about any of these statuses, let me know in the comments below. I do read them, and I really appreciate you guys when you interact with me and let me know that you're out there and you're watching and you're liking, okay? So let me know if you have any other statuses that you're using. We can work together and refine, our processes together. So I hope this video on workflow statuses in Jira was useful to you, and I will see you guys next time. Please check out my website, karaleise.com. Please check out the podcast, Real World Business Analysis with Karaleise. And for sure, go get that book on Amazon called The Business Analyst Job Market Report. And I will see you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.